Alright, hi everyone. I'm going to be uploading a few different Audacity tutorials. They're basically beginner's tutorials on how to get started with this software. This is the software that you're going to be using to work with your field recordings. Each tutorial will cover a different basic tool or function of Audacity. In this one, I'm just going to go over the interface of the software, which is a very simple software. It's free, as you already know. And it's super simple. Its functionalities are very basic. There's a limited amount of things you can do with it, but we're not looking to go completely wild with it. And some of the things you can do with it are actually pretty cool. And that's what I'd encourage you to explore. And like we did with Photoshop, I'll go over these basics, but I want you to explore the software on your own, use it on your own time, and really just start to experiment with it so you can learn it in more detail. There's only so much I can show you, and then you have to kind of explore it on your own and be autonomous with this software. So when you open Audacity, you should be seeing this this window, which is your project window. This is your project and what you're going to be working in. So the first thing you'll see is are these buttons up here, and we all know what these buttons mean, right? We have a pause, we have play, stop. This is to return to the beginning, skip to start, and this is to skip to end. If I were to have audio in here, it would skip the playhead all the way to the beginning or all the way to the end. If I were to press play, it would just start playing from where I have where the playhead is. And this is your record button. If you want to record audio, Audacity has a pretty good recording system and interface. It will record it directly into your project. And here you have your inputs and outputs. This is where you'll be hearing your sound, and if you were recording, you can set your input to be your microphone from your computer, or if you have an external microphone, you can do that as well. This is your driver, and I only have one, which is Core Audio. This is my input, which right now is just the microphone on my Macintosh, so it's my built-in microphone. If I were to have an external microphone or another audio interface, it would show up here underneath built-in microphone, and you would want to select the input that you want to use. This is how you would want to record. You could choose to record in stereo or in mono. Strangely enough, I prefer to record voice in mono. Because there's no real point for vocal recordings to be in stereo. If you were recording music or other things, you might want to do stereo. But voice doesn't really have any real need to be in stereo. You're kind of just adding more information for no reason. You kind of want voice to be coming from one speaker from one direction rather than possibly coming from two different speakers. So if you were to record in stereo, sometimes you'll find yourself just converting it to mono again. And this is your output. This is where you would be hearing your audio. So if you have external speakers, it would show up here. If you have headphones, it would show up here. I have an external monitor hooked in, and that's why HDMI is showing up, but nothing would come out of the HDMI port because it's not connected to any audio system. So I just have the speakers on my computer, which is called built-in output. So you would want to select the one that you will be using or that you want to use. It's usually automatic, but if it isn't, this is where you would go change the output. It's very important. If you're not hearing any audio, it's probably because your output is set to the wrong thing. Okay, so up here we have our different tools. We're not going to be using a lot of these actually. The ones that you really need to pay attention to are your selection tool, which is already selected, and it looks like if you're working in a Word document or something, it's that, and it allows you to select portions of your audio, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. This is your zoom tool. So if you want to, or F4, you can press F4 as well. Sorry. So if this allows you to zoom in and out of your project and of your audio file. I don't have an audio file here, so I can't actually zoom into anything, but we'll see how it works in a minute. And the other one that I would want you to use is the time shift tool. Now it's called the time shift tool, which is weird, but essentially it's just a move tool. It allows you to move your audio on the timeline. Actually, I'll bring in a piece of audio just so we can see how each of these tools work. Let me just grab something. Okay, which one should I do? Okay, I'm just going to grab this one at random. So to start a project and start working is fairly simple. You just have to drag your file into, your audio file into the Audacity window, and it will load it up in here. It will change down here, like I showed in the other tutorial, it will change your project rate to what the rate of the audio is. But you always want to make sure that you're working in 48,000 hertz. So if it isn't that, make sure to change it yourself. So here I have some audio. And so let's go to the tools. So this is your select tool, the top left tool here. And this allows you to select portions of your audio to work on. So let's say there was a section here, I'm like, oh, I want this to be louder or something. You would go in and select just that portion of the audio. Alternatively, if you want to select the entire audio piece, the entire track, you could do that with the select tool and select the entire thing like that. But alternatively, there's a much simpler way. You click right here where the information about this audio file is. You just click right here, and it will select the entire track of audio. So clicking right here will select the whole track. Okay. So like I said, this allows you to zoom in, and if I hold down Shift, that allows me to zoom out. So you see the plus sign allows me to zoom in, and it'll zoom in where you click. So right now I'm clicking where there's no audio, and if you press Shift, you zoom out, and then I can zoom back in here. Okay, so that's fairly simple. We all know how a zoom tool works. Now this is your time shift tool. And again, I don't know why it's called a time shift tool, because you're moving it along the timeline. So you would grab, if you click on the audio file, let's just move to the beginning here. If you click on the audio file with this time shift tool, you see I can move the audio down the timeline, which is super important for timing and things like that. You'll want to start moving things along the timeline, lining things up at the right time and things like that. So these are the three tools that you're really going to be working with. So just let's put it right back at the bottom, at the beginning there. And so there we go. So this is the move tool. I call it the move tool because that's essentially what you're doing it, but they call it the time shift tool because you're moving it along the timeline and changing when the start and end time of the file is according to the tracks. Okay, so the other stuff, it's fairly simple. You have your cut, copy, and paste. We're not going to look into recording right now very deeply. Largely because you're not required to record for this assignment, but if I have time, I will make one about recording in particular. Now here is your, this is your audio output, your playback volume, and your recording volume. So we don't really need to worry about the recording volume right now, but up here is your playback volume. If you find it super low and super quiet, you might want to raise it a little bit. I'm just going to keep it in the middle for now, and we'll see how it goes after. But this is really just, this isn't how loud it is, how loud the audio is coming in, how loud the audio actually is. This is just your speaker level. You're not actually affecting the output of your audio and the levels of your audio file. You're really just changing the playback volume. So your playback volume, you don't want to be changing much throughout while you're working. You want to keep it at the same thing all throughout. And you see if I press play, you see I see the recording levels here. I see the output levels here. So this is how loud the audio actually is. These are the levels. And if I were to lower this, you see the levels don't actually change. It's really just the audio output that's changing. It's the volume of my speakers that's changing. So this is how loud the audio actually is. Right now it's around -6 decibels. And this just changes how loud it is coming through my speakers. Okay. So if I wanted to change the actual levels of the audio, how would I go about doing that? Well, you have other tools here, and this is in your this is on the actual track itself. So here, here you have your track menu and your track settings and things you can affect directly to the track. None of this is really important right now. You could rename it to just track 1, which is, it's always good to be organized and name your tracks. So maybe you have a voiceover track or something, right? Or an ambience track. I like to name each track for what I'm working on. So this is more of an ambience. So I'm just going to put ambience and I'm going to rename it ambience. And you get there by clicking on the little arrow up here and clicking name. and you could change the name. So right now I have an ambience track that I'm going to be working on. Now to change the actual levels of this audio, you will be affecting this, which is your audio gain. So here, if I press play, I'm actually just going to lower my volume here just so it's not overtaking my voice. So if I press play, you see the audio levels coming in at about -6. If I were to lower my gain, which is this one with the little plus and the minus, lower the dBs, you see how the levels up here are going down? So this is changing the actual levels of the audio file. So when I export my audio at the end, it would be a much quieter file, much quieter audio than it was coming in. Alternatively, I can make it much louder. But as you see, and you might be able to hear too, it's peaking. And so the audio is distorting and clipping. If you start to see it in the red, you want to lower that gain so we can have it in a much more listenable space. Otherwise, you're going to peak and you're going to lose information, and the audio is going to distort as a result. So it was pretty good already because this is something I had mixed before. So I'm at about -6, and I like it right there. But if you find yourself with a file that's too quiet or too loud, this is where you will affect the actual levels of the audio itself, which is right here. Now right below it is your panning. I don't really want you to be focusing on panning too much, but this allows you, with a stereo file, it allows you to send the audio to one speaker or one headphone or to the other headphone. So to the left. So as you see, the right goes all the way down, and now everything's on the left side of the output. But if I go to the right, oops, you see up here in your levels, the right channel is dominating now. But I like to bring it back to the center, right to the middle, and so now it's about even throughout. Okay. A couple of other things here. Let's say you're working with a lot of tracks, which happens quite often. Let's throw in another one. If you throw in another audio file, as I just did, you see it opens it up on another track. So now I have 2 tracks and 2 audio files. You could move, I can't right now because there's something in the way, but if you're working with multiple audio files, you're going to have a lot of different tracks here. And that's why it's good to name your tracks, because it'll just help keep you organized and find the right track. So each time you bring in a new audio file into your project, you are going to have new tracks, and you're always going to be working with multiple tracks. Audio editing is about layering. You're layering tracks and audio files on top of each other, much like when you're working with layers in Photoshop, or in video if you're working with a timeline in Premiere or something like that, right? So it's very similar, it's non-linear, and you're layering different sounds on top of each other. Okay, so let's say I'm working with both of these audio files. And you see the more audio I layer on top of each other, the louder it's going to be, because the gain is stacking on top of each other. So once you start adding a lot of files on top of each other, that's when you're going to have to start messing around with your gain levels, just to make sure you're not clipping and peaking at any point, right? So the moment you start layering a lot of audio on top of each other, it'll start to get louder and louder and fuller, but then you'll need to kind of bring the levels of each audio track down so that they blend together well and not too loudly, and that they don't distort. But let's say I'm working on this file, on this project, and I only want to listen to this track because this one's getting in the way and there's something I need to fix in here or something like that, or something I want to do, or I just want to isolate this track down here. Well, it's fairly simple. You can either click solo. So let's say I just want to hear this bottom track. If I click solo on it, that means I'm listening to this track solo. It's the only track I'm hearing. All of the other tracks are muted, and they mute automatically when I click solo. You see, when I unclick solo, we come back on and the other track comes online and it's no longer grayed out. If I click solo, it gets muted. Same thing if I click solo up here, the other track gets muted. So this is if you want to listen to one track on its own because you need to change the levels of just that one track, or you want to add an effect to that one track. You'll be soloing that track. Alternatively, you can also just mute the other tracks so you can hear this one. But if you have a lot of tracks, like let's say you have 15 or 20 different audio tracks, it's much quicker to just select solo on one of them and then mute all of the others automatically, rather than going one by one and muting each other track. So you might be using this a lot. It's something I use quite frequently. It's an important tool to work on one file while you have a ton of different audio in the project already, but you just really want to be affecting one specific track. So you would solo that track to really just isolate and hear that track. Okay. So one more thing is I'm just going to show you with your select tool, which I didn't go over before. So your selection tool up here. So your selection tool allows you to kind of select parts. You could copy, paste, you could delete parts of your audio. This is what's going to allow you to make edits to your audio. So here, if I were to select the end, let's say I'm like, oh, this is too long, and I want it to actually end over here. Like right here at 145, I would select from 145 all the way to the end, and then I would press delete. And there we go, it just deletes that portion of the audio. Let me just undo that. So it's fairly simple, it's like any other software, right? You select and delete. Alternatively, you can delete sections in between an audio clip, but you see it kind of collapses it down, and it makes this little edit point here. And this is where the select tool will, so let's say you want to get rid of the middle of a piece of audio. You would just press delete, and there you go. You get rid of that middle portion of your audio. Alternatively, you can copy and paste. So let's say I want to extend this or something. I would press Command C. I would select this portion, press Command C, click outside of the audio, and I can press Command V, and there we go. I have this portion copied over here, and I could then move this around as I please, like any other audio file. This is good if you want to make loops or something. If you have a short piece of audio and you want to just loop it back on itself over and over and over again, kind of like you're in this repeating nightmare or something. Or if you have an ambience that's only 1 minute, so this ambience is 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Let's say I want to loop it over again so that it lasts longer. I would just copy the entire piece of audio, the entire ambience. I would paste it afterwards, and then I would just drag it there and put them together here. And then there's other things you could do to make sure that this edit is smooth and you don't hear the audio clipping as it goes over this edit point. And we'll go over that in another tutorial video. But that's how you use the selection tool to copy and paste audio, and using it in a very basic way if you need to. Okay. So let's say I'm like, I'm going to go over exporting as well in this tutorial, just to show you the basics of the software and how to use it. So let's say I'm like, this sounds great. I love how this sounds, and I want to export this audio. Well, it's fairly simple like any other program. If you go to File, what do we see? We see New, we see Open, Open Recent. If I were to go to Save Project, Save Project As, so here I get this warning box. So Save Project is for an Audacity project, not an audio file. For an audio file that will open in other apps, use Export. So I was going to say this anyways, and I'm glad that Audacity has this warning so that you see it as well. You're not exporting an audio file when you click Save As. You're exporting a project. Much like a .psd file or a Premiere project file, you are not actually exporting or saving an MP3 or a .wav or something like that. You're exporting an audio file that you could then open in Audacity and edit some more, right? If you have those audio files with you. But it's important because if you want to make changes to you should be saving your project so you could go back and make changes because you might be working on it for a very long time. So here I'm going to click OK. And it's going to bring up a dialog box, and I'm just going to save it here. And you see it's the extension for an Audacity project is .aup. So I'm just going to name it test.aup. And there we go. Now my Audacity project is saved onto my computer, so I could go back and edit it. But what if I've done this audio and I want to save it and submit it as my assignment? Well, then you would need to go to File, Export, and for this class I want you to be exporting a WAV. A .wav, it's a high quality audio file and not super compressed. The compression is very minimal, so you get high quality audio. So go to Export, Export as WAV, And it's a very similar dialog box to saving, but this time you're exporting it as an audio file. This audio file can't be opened in Audacity and edited. It can only be played back. I mean, you can edit an audio file, but all of the tracks are going to be collapsed down into a stereo file, and that is all you are going to have. It's going to be your submission. It's going to be the final audio file that you can play back and listen to. It's going to be the final mix. So we'll do this, and we'll export it as a WAV. So down here, so you have your file type. You can save it as other file types, but for this class, we're just doing WAV. Now this is important here, you're encoding. What's important is that you're exporting it at a high quality, as a high quality file. And like we discussed in class, 24-bit and above is usually pretty good quality. 16-bit, let's ignore 16-bit for now, and I'd like you to export your files as a 24-bit and 48,000 hertz. So you set up your project rate at 48,000 hertz earlier, so that should be good. And then here's where you set up your bit rate. You're going to set it up as a signed 24-bit PCM. It might be set as 16 when you get to this dialog box, so you'll need to actually go and change it yourself. So let's change that encoding to 24-bit, make sure the file type is a WAV. Then if I click Save, your tracks will be mixed down and exported as one stereo file. As I already explained, it's nice that Audacity has these warnings, especially for people who haven't used this software before. It's teaching us as we go. So here, I'll click OK. Then you'll be, I think we went over this already in a different tutorial, but I'm going to be given, you're going to get this other meta tag dialog box where you can add artist names, track titles. Don't worry about this for now. You can actually choose to not show it when exporting audio. I keep it there just in case I want to put my name for copyright reasons or something, but for now we'll just ignore it and I'll just press OK. It's exporting. It might take a little time depending on how long and how many tracks your project has. And now let's see where it went. It should have gone into my teaching folder, and it's right here. Now my volume is very low, that's why I'm not hearing anything. So there we go, we've exported it as a WAV and it's ready to submit if we need to. So that's like the basic interface of Audacity. We'll get into more detail in the next one, in the next tutorial. We'll go through some of these other things up here, like generating noise and silence, but I really want us to just get used to moving audio files around, copying, pasting, deleting, looping things, and then we'll talk in the next tutorial video. We'll talk about effects and how we can completely transform your audio files into something new. And transform it and layer audio on top of each other, how we can mix audio sounds together to make sure to build an environment and a soundscape like you're going to need to do for your final assignment in the next 2 weeks.